Welcome to Cheaper Than Therapy, a podcast that journeys into conversations with the intention of demystifying, destigmatizing, and desensitizing what really gets talked about behind the closed doors of the therapy room.
I'm Vanessa Bennett.
And I'm Danae Selkin.
And we're seekers, soul sisters, and holders of sacred space. So join us as we dive into the ways that therapy can be connecting not only to yourself, but also to those around you. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Cheaper Than Therapy. Today we're going to do a session with Kate, and Kate reached out with a struggle that Danae and I feel like we can actually commiserate, especially Danae more than anybody, can commiserate with, which is just the state of the world right now. But being a single parent with a 5-year-old, how do you manage it all? How do you date? How do you, keep yourself afloat and focus on yourself and self-care and all the things when you feel like you have so much to juggle. And I'm not doing it justice. I want you to take us through it, Kate, but I feel like that's kind of the 30,000 foot view. So why don't you just take us through, what the struggle's been for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I have primary custody of my 5-year-old. So I've been divorced for a year. I was with my ex-husband for 18 years.
Wow.
And so when I initiated the separation, and he made the choice to move to Chula Vista. So I have really just been essentially the primary caregiver of my daughter. And I work in the field of social services. So unfortunately, I've not been able to stay home. My work has gotten busier than it was before. So I'm dealing with that. And then why I kind of reached out to you guys is I grew up in a pretty chaotic environment, and leaving my ex-husband sort of brought up everything that I had been running from and numbing out on. So during this pandemic, I'm trying to juggle taking care of a 5-year-old, making sure that she is protected as much as possible from not only the effects of the divorce, but my mental health. I want to make sure that I'm doing the best that I can, and she's not really feeling any of the impact of my struggles. And then now this pandemic, which has been really difficult for all of us. So what I'm finding is that I sort of lose myself. I think the weekends that I don't have her, I miss her terribly, obviously, but I have moments of reflection and sort of being able to find myself again and really feel that grounding experience of being in connection with myself. And then once the week starts, I lose it. So I just get so caught up in really trying to just take care of like the major things that go on. We just had the whole kindergarten debacle, trying to figure out where she would go since I can't stay home. I hear some deep breaths. Yeah, we all relate. So, and it's been difficult because I don't have his support. I don't have his financial support either. So I'm working on that, and that's part of what my journey has been, is learning to set boundaries. But I know what I'm really trying to do is just find a way to connect with myself more often. I left the marriage because I felt like I was wasting my life. I just felt like I was sort of living in like a whole kind of and numbing out. And so I left the marriage to really honor myself and give myself a life that's worth living and give myself the life I'm intended to live. But I'm finding it's really hard unless I can run away, do the whole eat, pray, love thing and run away to other one. Yeah, yes. It is. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I want to first say I commend you. I mean, without knowing too many of the details, I commend you for honoring yourself and listening to what it was that you needed and leaving something that you had been in for so long, right? Because I think that, and I'm sure you know this, people don't do that, right? Like we've seen a lot of people who would just stay because the other thing seems harder, even if that is what their soul and their heart really needs and desires. So I think it's worthy of putting that out there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was I believe in a higher power. That's just kind of my belief system, and it was definitely a higher power thing. I sort of felt like I was like moving towards a light, like not dead light, but like it was something very weird where I was like saying things that I didn't even. I allowed my heart to speak, and I don't know where I got the courage from, to be honest with you. It somehow came there. And I think I was just able to just live in the moment for those couple months where I really got to make the decision and move forward, even when it was really difficult.
Yeah. Kate, I think even in that decision, that is already such powerful modeling that you're doing for your daughter, choosing myself, insisting upon myself and this one life that I have, right? So how do I want to live it? That is already something you are teaching her, just being in your presence, in standing in your truth. And I think, I'm so glad that you reached out to us, because I feel like what you're speaking to is so much of what so many parents are struggling with right now, so many different levels of it, right? Like, I think this pandemic, all of the deep uncertainty that all of us are facing, has brought up so much childhood trauma for so many of us, right? Like, times I've been like, felt like things are out of control, times that things have been just like deeply uncertain for me and what's going to happen next. It's all sort of coming to the surface. In addition to that, I'm navigating being a single parent for the first time. In addition to that, I'm trying to be a person while a single parent, in the midst of a time when it's really difficult, frankly, to be a person in general.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of the perfect storm. And I think just your awareness of how much I'm trying to juggle is really powerful in and of itself, right? Like, you are tuned into that and aware, like, this is a lot. I think what Vanessa and I probably talk about a lot, and I'm sure is that when you said you're a social worker, is that right?
I am.
So when I have a fair amount of awareness of, things that go on with kiddos and things I want to get right, I feel like there can be like this added pressure of like, I can't screw this up. With my child, I want to make sure that I'm not doing this wrong. Right. And I think, for us, we really have to sort of also give ourselves the grace that we would offer other people, right? Like, we have to take some of our own advice in that, just being there, just being present, that in and of itself is enough a lot of times, right? We don't have to do it perfectly. We just sort of have to be good enough parents,
Well, and what is perfect even, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, Danae, it's like we've all been there, seen that, in our world of work, if you will. And I would say the people that come out the best are the ones that do have that solid support system, that no matter what, they know that you're there and that you've got their back, and that you're teaching them, to Danae's point, to like honor themselves. Right. And in saying that too, it's like, I don't want to poo-poo that the struggle of all of this is not minimized by us saying you're still doing a good job. Right. I mean, because you're in it, and it feels sometimes like you can't keep your head above water, and that is valid. I wonder I guess, man, I'm struggling right now to formulate words. I've got so many thoughts that I want to bring up.
No worries. I relate.
Yeah. I'm like, I wonder, what does the dynamic look like? Could you give us a little bit of background on like, how has your daughter been, since coming through this? Like, what's the dynamic with her dad? Like, what are you witnessing, I guess, in how it's unfolding?
So initially she really struggled. So my ex moved out last summer. So, initially she really struggled with attachment. So, she couldn't be in the room by herself. We've been co-sleeping. I'm trying to like pull away from that, but it's really difficult. So we've been co-sleeping off and on since then. When the pandemic hit, it was extremely difficult for her. She was having really, really bad anxiety. So she wasn't sleeping at night. She was waking up numerous times throughout the night, extremely clingy. So as a parent too, that's something I really am trying to give myself grace with, because those moments when it's like, all I want is just to breathe and like have a moment to just stare at the wall. Those are the moments when she she literally wants to be on top of me, like clinging onto me. So she's better now. I mean, I think the last year was definitely difficult. I live with my parents at the moment. That's something else that I'm working on changing, is just moving out. But they've been really supportive. So that has been something consistent with her, where she has those support systems. And then one of the things that I've seen with her is just her really acting out. So she's really tough, and I'm grateful for that. Like I have faith that she's gonna be able to honor herself. She's different than me. Like, I'm such a people pleaser, and that's not how my daughter is. She's a little sassy pants, and I love it. So what I'm seeing with her is she's like becoming bossier. Like, she's trying to really control the environment. So what I'm trying to do is just teach her, but also give her that space to have some control of things. And with kindergarten, she started last week. She's actually like rocking it. She's doing a really good job.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that. But it has been a struggle. And I think for her, and I liked what you said, Danae, about, I feel like sometimes the more knowledge we have, sometimes it's harder, because I'm constantly worrying about what's going on in her head and how she's perceiving things. So yeah, but I think that she's probably better than she has been in the last year.
Well, the reason why I even ask, and I guess I didn't even know why I was asking when I was asking, I was just kind of letting it come up, was in hearing you say that, it's almost so much more reassurance that it feels like you are there, like you are witnessing her, you are, you know, you're not controlling it for her, you're not taking it away, you're not band-aiding it, you know, because we can't, right? But it sounds like you're really present, actually, and you're really aware of what's happening with her. And so if I can feel it, because I can literally feel that in my body, I know
Cool.
that
Thank you.
she can too.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, like I resonate so much, Kate, with so much of what you're talking about. I separated from my kiddo's dad in October. And so, you know, a lot of these things that like sort of come up where you're like initially, like, just like the co-sleeping, like wanting to be in bed with you every night. And it's like, like, are we creating environments that are like, this isn't a good thing? And it's like, I think so much of it, you do a really beautiful job of putting words to the things that you're seeing, allowing for whatever she's feeling to be okay. Like Vanessa said, I can hear it in the way that you speak. And I think that does so much for them, right? I think the more that we can sort of make space for ourselves and are, you know, obviously in an age appropriate way, but like articulating, this is what I'm feeling. And it's like, sometimes mommy is overwhelmed and frustrated, and we get to feel that way, and that's all okay. You know, that's part of our human experience. But more and more, I am learning as I've become a parent that our work is not so much about like sheltering them from all the hard things. It's allowing them to see for themselves, you can do these hard things. You can sort of ride these difficult waves because mommy's doing it, and it's not easy for mommy, but she is getting through it, and you can too. I believe in you, you know?
Yeah. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think I don't give myself enough credit for her. She does. It's funny though, the other day I was having a really difficult morning, and I said, you know, mom's feeling really frustrated right now. And she's like, yeah, mom, I can tell. I'm like, cool.
But you put words to it. And guess what? You know probably better than most how many don't do that, right? And then they take that over to the corner and they're like, I must be doing something wrong. It must be me, right? I know something's going on, but she won't admit that something's going on. So maybe it's me, I'm crazy, right? So the fact that you were able to do that, it feels small, but people don't give the credit where credit's due. That's a big deal.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate that. You guys are lovely. And I know for me too, like one thing that I do struggle with, because my mom was agoraphobic when I was growing up. And my sister has borderline personality disorder. And so I did have those feelings of like, you know, what can I fix? How can I fix them so that there's no tension in the room? Like, how can I be better so the family is better? And I know for me, I really want to do what I can to help her not have those feelings.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, Kate, like I don't feel worried about you as a mom. Like I really feel like you know how to do this now. I do want to talk about you as Kate, right? So let's bring you into the conversation a little bit. What has rediscovering yourself as a single woman felt like this last year?
So it was initially terrifying. There was a joke. I live in LA, and my brother was actually joking that they should do like a mural of me, like the crying girl in LA, with like me in my car with like Jackson Brown on a loop. Because the initial 6 months was extremely difficult. And like I said, it was really hard. It just brought up a lot of abandonment issues. I think maybe the more pain than I've ever felt in my life. And I say that only for people that are listening to this that are also going forward in a divorce. It's like I've never felt that much pain in my life. And so I definitely went to Al-Anon. I went to some therapy. Now what it feels like is I sort of feel like I was walking around hunched over for the last 20 years. And I've learned to stand up straight. What I'm trying to do is just honor myself and like finding things that I like. I think when I left the marriage, I didn't even have a favorite movie because I never got to decide what we watched. Not in like a mean way. I think I just kind of gave in to whatever he wanted. So now it's really just about, sometimes it's really small things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what music do I want to listen to? What podcast do I want to listen to? What movie do I want to watch? And then there's other things where it's like, taking control of my finances.
Yeah.
I think just learning how to adult without looking to somebody for help. I think that's a lot of it, is just, and I think that's what I struggle with, is really believing in myself that I can take care of myself financially, emotionally, all of that stuff.
Well, let me just please affirm for a moment, sister,
Mm-hmm.
you are a warrior. When you think about the length of your relationship, the courage that it took to say, I want a different life for myself. And, to the point of what Vanessa was saying, a lot of people will have an awareness of that truth and continue to push it down for the rest of their life. The courage that it takes to actually step into that takes my breath away. And so I think, just sort of continuing to remind yourself of, you have done the hardest part of this work, right? Now what you get to do is all of the things that you're talking about, right?
Discover
like
yourself.
I get to cultivate a love affair with Kate now. I get to step into all of the things that I want to do. And what I find is so beautiful about this space is it becomes genuinely like, choose your own adventure. Like, I get to write the permission slip to myself to do whatever I want to do with my time. Now, listen, I have a young kiddo too, so I know it's like, well, some of that is easier said than done. I can't just like fly off to Bali tomorrow. I do have a kid. And yet, the age that our kiddos are, it will not always be the case, but I do still think that there are ways to cultivate little bits of what I love about this life into my life consistently,
Well, right. Even like what she was just saying about like the movies or the music or the podcast, like that kind of stuff feels to me like people might be like, oh, that like, let's poo-poo, it's so small, but it's not. It's actually a big deal. And that stuff feels like stuff you can do while also spinning the plate of childbearing, and also to Danae's point, giving yourself the credit for, maybe it is just, I got sucked into the Netflix hole and I chose which movie I want to watch. But maybe actually some of the work is to take a beat and go, you know what though, but I did that thing. I chose it. This is what I wanted to do. This is my movie. This is my responsibility, my choice. Just like reminding yourself as you're doing these little things, that they're not that little.
Yeah. And I think I totally agree. And I know with that too, bringing back to the pandemic, I think that's what's also been difficult, is not being able to do those things. I really love going to the Getty, and I'd actually like planned a day off to like go by myself. It's like on my bucket list. It's such a small thing, but it's like on my bucket list of I want to go to the Getty on my own. But the Netflix for sure, like those small things. And again, like finding my own movie, like it's such a silly thing, but it's that question that always comes up and I've never been able to answer it. And so those moments where I'm really enjoying something, and I think I'm having moments where I just feel like complete peace and connected.
Yeah.
I was really numb for a really long time. And that feeling of being connected and feeling completely grounded is there more often than it's ever been.
Can I ask you, Kate, just for someone who might be listening, who's in the place now that you were, how do you sort of in retrospect look back and know that I was numb? Like, what were the thoughts? Like, how do you sort of reflect on that time with an awareness now of what you weren't able to see then, do you think?
I know one thing, it's hard to explain, but I would wake up it's kind of weird, but I remember every single morning, I would wake up in the morning and have a moment of feeling lost. Like, it's kind of odd to say, but I think that was one of the things that was such a huge turning point for me.
Yes.
Is just waking up and every morning having to reestablish who I was. And it's interesting because I woke up for a second this morning and kind of had that. And then I was like, no, I'm good. And I remembered and I don't think I would have remembered that if I hadn't had the experience this morning, to be honest with you. But I just remember that. I think also never really feeling safe. I think there was a lot of checking in with other people. When I started to feel kind of that pit in my stomach, I would push it down and kind of be like, oh, I'm okay, or check in with somebody, just to feel like I was like anchored to something. And that's like codependency at its finest.
Right. Getting it from
Oh
the
gosh.
outside, right? The external
Yeah.
versus the in, yeah.
And I know it more. And I think just not caring. I mean, there were a lot
apathy.
of situations in our relationship. What was that?
Like apathy, just being
Yeah.
apathetic. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times where I would, and it's just silly things. And, my ex-husband and we were both doing the best that we could, but, like just deciding where we were going to eat or what we were going to watch, and it became an argument. And then I just really didn't care. Like, that's cool. Like, whatever you want, that's fine. And just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I hear often what you're describing as, life as this thing that I have to get through.
Yes.
Versus this thing that I get to live, right?
Yeah.
Like, as I hear you talking about your life now, I feel so excited for you because it's like the possibility is so alive, right?
Yeah.
And yes, we are in the midst of a time that could not have been foreseen. And so there is a lot of navigating what this is. And yet this will not be what it is forever. And like we were talking about, there are ways to sort of, cultivate little bits of love for my life in my everyday now. Like I have loved like decorating my bedroom in a way that feels like this is my room.
Yeah.
I love it, little things.
Yeah. It's really cool actually, because I was living in my daughter's bedroom while we were living together for a few months before he moved out, and then he left, and my walls are now maroon and it is beautiful.
Love it.
My best friend came over and it's like the prettiest color, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is me. Like I love this.
That's what's up.
So yeah.
And so that's the stuff, right? Like people can't see your face, but like to see the way your face just lit up when you spoke about this color and how this color like actually made you feel, right?
Yeah.
And it's like tapping into that, right? Like it sounds like you have a little bit of that practice already there, right? Taking that moment to pause and say like, what is that? Oh, that's joy. Actually,
aliveness.
That's freedom.
Yeah.
That's aliveness. That's expansiveness, right? Like putting the words to it and saying, oh, that's what that is. And here's the thing. I'm not trying to Pollyanna this. This shit is also really hard, right? Like we, this, like we are meant to do this with other people. So there are going to be times, I know you said you're dating somebody, but there are going to be times where like, yeah, it's great that I now found a movie that I love, but I wish I had someone here to enjoy it with, right? Of course that kind of stuff is going to come up. It's inevitable. And can we allow both of those truths to exist and not have but I wish someone was here to share it with, or I wish this pandemic wasn't going on so I could be doing more to trump the things that you're actually sitting in and those experiences of joy to actually be just that. And I think that's a little bit of the work, right? It's this idea of holding tension of the opposites. Like, can we allow both of those truths to be true?
Yeah. And I that is so true. And I think even with my daughter, and I think a lot of what I feel, and I'm saying this because I'm sure other people will relate, is there is a lot of regret. I think just with things, her first day of school, these milestone moments where I didn't anticipate that I would be doing them alone. And so for me, I think it's been sort of a constant grieving process. And a lot of times it's unexpected. The whole kindergarten thing, I didn't expect it to be so painful. Like I didn't expect to have that regret. And for her and for me, of like, geez, like, this is not what I anticipated. And so I know I try to just sit with it and like honor it for a little bit and feel it.
And can you name it, right? Like what you just did. Can you do that in a way where you're not putting your experience on her, obviously, but especially if you guys, it sounds like you guys are as in sync as you are. If you're feeling some of that from her, can you put words to it? Like, hey, it seems like, like maybe this is difficult. Is this a little difficult for you? And I can imagine her being like, kind of, like I'm a little nervous or I'm a little scared or whatever it is. And be like, yeah, I feel that. Like I am too.
Yeah.
And helping her know that she can say that. She can name it out loud. And because here's the thing, she doesn't have to protect you.
Yeah.
right? Which you grew up
Yeah.
doing. She doesn't have
Yeah.
to shield you. She can say to you, you know what, Mom, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little scared. Or, you know what, I wish Dad was here.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have to not say that for fear of hurting your feelings, because she's watching you in your vulnerability and in your strength also put words to things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is what I hope
Mm-hmm.
for her. And I think for me, I know that I really have a habit of just, again, like numbing out, like just really pushing things down, and then they explode later. And so I know for me, just giving myself those moments of like honoring those feelings, even though I think this is the first time I've like said it out loud. Because when you
Sure.
instigate something too, like I kind of feel like, well, I made that decision, like I gotta suck it up and deal with it.
Right.
But that, and then with the pandemic also, it's like, you're right, like just watching a movie, you know, like being like, okay, there's nothing else to do, like,
This
and
is my
kind of
choice.
wanting, yeah, like here I am. And I think sometimes it's like, oh geez, like this isn't what I anticipated, you know, like I think when I did instigate it, I sort of pictured a more eat, pray, love situation.
And the universe was like, nope, we're going to keep you in your
Yeah.
house and you're going to have to really sit with us.
Yes, that darn universe.
I know.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
sometimes it's important to sort of name that, you know, in the midst of the eat, pray, love experience, I'm sure Elizabeth Gilbert wasn't always feeling all of the meaning and all of the
Yeah,
conclusions that she came
that's such
to
a good
in the
point.
space of
Post.
writing.
Right.
But,
Yeah,
you
for
know,
sure.
this is the book that I've written at the end. And sometimes when we are in it, it is,
Yeah.
you know, like waves that hit us and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? That grief just like
Yeah.
took me out. I wasn't expecting the first day of school to feel this way. And
Yes.
that's okay. You know, I'm still here
Yeah.
feeling it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I know with her, it's funny because she talks about crying on the bathroom floor. She was like, you don't really know you're going through something until you cry on the bathroom floor. And there was like a moment where I was like in a public space and I was like in a stall crying on the bathroom floor. And I actually kind of laughed. And I was like, Elizabeth Gilbert's right. Like, here I am on a bathroom floor.
She has a
It
way
is
with words,
real.
that one.
She really
Absolutely.
does. Yeah. So it's so true. Like, I think it's maybe just understanding that it's a package deal. Like, I think, walking through this situation, like I know that there is and I see the light. In all honesty, it's so much better than it was. But just knowing that each time I'm like going through these difficult times, you know, where it's like kindergarten or pandemics or even just a really hard, I actually ended up getting COVID. I'm okay, but it was that was also really difficult because it was extremely lonely, and I sort of was waiting for my knight in shining armor to come and like sing to me at the bedroom window or something.
Yeah, sure.
And I was like, it's not going to happen. Like,
He's not coming to serenade me.
Yeah, no one's coming. Like, I'm on my own here.
Yeah.
And so it's really having to find pieces of me. And sometimes I have to dig a little harder than I anticipated.
Yeah. You know, I think, Kate, you are teaching your daughter so much about resilience right now. And, you know, from what you're telling us, I can hear that she is embodying a lot of that already.
Yes.
But I think that there is something to be said for letting go of the ideas of the pretty pictures and the, you know, the holiday cards that we send out that look all great and
Oh God,
perfect, and
yes.
and just the fantasies that weren't the reality. Like, how many of
Yeah.
us have been in the felt sense of what is the truth of what is happening versus the pretty pictures that we're showing the world. And I think there's
Yeah.
just something so beautiful about teaching not only our children, but, you know, embodying for ourselves, like, the truth is better. It's not always pretty. Sometimes it's actually so messy,
So
but
much more painful.
there is just so much more power in the truth, you know?
Yeah. Yes. It's the Christmas card thing. I've already been struggling with that. It's
I
it's
feel
like
you.
about that time where we would start
I
planning it
feel
out.
you.
Well, the good thing is that I feel like a lot of people's Christmas cards are going to be screwed up this year because COVID. So
Yes,
maybe you
that's
get a
so
pass.
true. I
You
think
know,
I
I mean,
do.
look, hey, not that you expected this, but I know this is one of those things we can't solve it in a 30-minute chat.
Oh
What we
yeah.
can do, right, is remind ourselves, ground ourselves, put it out there for other people, I think, to also hear, and learn from, right, and kind of roll around in it with you, whether it's actually physically with you or not. But
Yeah.
I think this is it for you. I think it's these breadcrumb moments, and sometimes it's overwhelming, to Danae's point, and sometimes it's like, oh my God, I want to connect with myself. I need a minute. I wish I could fly to Bali. That's okay. That's all truth and reality. And again, holding attention to the opposites, in this moment, I really feel like sushi tonight. And so that's what I'm going to have. And I don't have to ask anybody's permission for that. And okay, that actually feels kind of good. And can both of those be true? Can I wish I could fly to Bali right now and be happy that I chose sushi for myself and I'm enjoying the taste of it? Yes, I can do both. So I think especially right now in this pandemic, when we can't do things like go to the Getty alone, those are going to be your breadcrumbs.
Yes. I love you describing it as breadcrumbs, because it does feel like the thing that I can hold on to right now in a time when that is what we need a little bit. It's like the hope that I hold on to about what my life is continuing to evolve into.
And what do the breadcrumbs lead you to, right?
Yeah,
like
I
we think
love
of
that.
stories and we think of myth, like the breadcrumbs lead you to the thing.
Yeah.
You have to follow the breadcrumbs. You're picking them up as you're going, and eventually you come out of the clearing and there's the candy house, or there's beautiful waterfall, or whatever the thing is. But the point is these are on the path for a reason.
Yes.
Leading you towards the thing, right?
Yeah, that's such a cool analogy. I'm gonna use that, Vanessa.
Me too, V.
I love it.
Well, Kate, we just really appreciate you coming on to talk to us, because I think what both Vanessa and I know is that there are so many, I won't even say women, but just like people that are sort of struggling with, I know that this isn't the truth. This isn't the highest truth for my life, the most true, beautiful life I can imagine for myself. And just you sort of speaking to, your courage and what you have done for yourself. I applaud you. I'm in awe, and I'm really grateful that you were willing to share with us. So
and the fact, by the way, I think what people are going to take from this, I have a feeling that there's going to be at least one person out there that's going to think to themselves, oh, I can be the one to walk away and still be in pain. It's still okay that it's the hardest thing I'm ever going to do, or that I'm going to feel more pain, like you said, than I've ever felt before. Because guess what? That's allowed. Even if you are the one to make the choice, it's allowed, right? And what does Glennon Doyle say in her book? She says there's no such thing as one-way liberation.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So you might have been the one to physically walk out the door, right? But we know that there was liberation past just you in this scenario, I'm sure.
Yes, there was. And that's something I have to remind myself of a lot. And I think too, I will tell people that, like, I know for me, I had to get to a point of like forgiving myself, not necessarily for even walking away, but for being in that relationship for so long. And for what, I don't think it's ever pretty when you walk away. I mean, it just isn't, it gets really messy. And so I got to forgive myself, and there was just a moment where I realized that's what I needed to do. And I know that moment was extremely freeing for me. I'm realizing that was like something that I had to work on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that's going to be powerful for somebody to hear.
I hope so.
Wow.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on. This is a good conversation, and keep us posted. Email me and let us know how you're doing. We'd love to hear from you, and especially as we come out of this, hopefully in the next few months or so.
I know. Fingers crossed. Yeah. And well, thank you, ladies. I love this podcast, so I was excited to be on it.
Thank you, Kate. You take care.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Cheaper Than Therapy.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
And if you want to connect with us, you can find us on Instagram at Vanessa S. Bennett
and at Danae Logan Selkin.